Hey guys, welcome to Coding After 30. Hope you guys are doing great. In today's video, I want to talk about what I've learned my first year and a half working as a developer and what are the expectations. With that being said though guys, let's say hi in the comments as you guys come in. I just want to see how you guys doing. Hope everybody's having an amazing day or weekend. But in this video, I just want to talk about what I have learned, what are the expectations of being or becoming a junior developer. One of the hardest things for me was, especially being self-taught, is that there's no expectations of what you're going to do at work because you don't know. You're learning on your own, you're using courses like Udemy, and from all my experience doing courses on Udemy and other platforms, what I realize is that they teach you the basics of code, but they don't teach you on how to get a job. They don't even prepare you to be job ready. It's something that you have to discover on your own, and it's hard to do. And so in this video, I wanted to talk about, have a conversation at least about what my expectations were going into my first job, what I actually did, and what do I do now after starting a new contract role. But as you guys jumping in the comments, don't be shy, say hello. I would love to hear how you guys are all doing, and let me know if you guys could hear me and if you guys could hear the music or not. Let me know, just so I know that the audio is working and everything else is working. And again, if you're jumping in, we'll wait a few more minutes before really getting into the deep topic of what we're going to talk about. But I want to talk about what I've learned being a developer for a year and a half. What are the expectations? What were the struggles? What issues I was having? And kind of this whole idea that if you're self-taught and you're looking to get your first role, it's really challenging in the sense that since you've never worked before, you don't even know what to expect. And today I want to talk about that, kind of hear your opinion on it. And I see Dustin's here. Let's see here. Let's see. Hey Dustin, good to see you. Glad you are able to join us. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you guys have questions in terms of what it's like getting your first job. What are the expectations? To be honest, it's something that I struggled for a very long time, trying to understand what do I need to know. And I think when you're starting to apply for jobs, it's very important to do your research to kind of see what technologies they're using, so you're at least familiar with that. And this contract role that I got, before I even interviewed for the position, I talked to one of the people that worked there to find out what they were doing, what stack they were using. They were using React, they were using SAS for their CSS, and they were using some React Bootstrap components, and their backend is in Python. So I had to do some research and to prepare myself for that interview. And that's the thing that I realized for a lot of you guys who are looking to get a job, it's very difficult to kind of know what are you going to do. And I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about my struggles. Hopefully they'll help you to prepare yourself a little bit better. I want to talk about why Udemy courses don't prepare you for work. I think they prepare you to learn, but the most important part is being able to build your portfolio in a very specific way to go about it, to at least prepare you in the best possible way. And I'm learning all these things now. I wish I knew it before so I wouldn't have to struggle as much. Hey, Hologram Nunchucks, was good, Paul. Good to see you, man. Glad you guys are here. Let me know, guys, where you are in your journey. If you're looking to get a job, if you're already working, what has your experience been working on as a junior developer? Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. But the struggle is real, let me tell you, because no matter how many courses you take, majority of them don't teach you your day-to-day kind of responsibilities that you're going to have. You really don't know. And depending who you talk to, some people be like, oh, when you get hired, you're going to be working on just doing some basic bugs and resolving issues. At my job, that has not been the case. They kind of put me right into like the thick of it, at least at my level, being a junior. And now my new contract role that I started, basically, I'm expected to produce, and I think that's the most important part is when you're learning to code is to ask yourself, and the technology that you're learning, are you at a position where you're able to produce and be productive at work and accomplish things? And so I randomly looked up today, because I prepared at the last minute, you know, uh, like some articles on what should your junior developer know, and maybe I'll take a look at some of these, talk about if that has been the case for me or it has not been the case for me. But at the end of the day, when you're looking to get a job, there's so much stuff to learn, and I'm always hesitant with this idea, like, you know, how much you really need to know, and is 3 months enough time to prepare for a junior role? And I guess it depends on the company, and it depends where you're starting and where you going, and so I guess you could just jump into it and take a look at some of these articles that I saw about expectations of being a junior developer. But before I show you some of these articles, I just want to talk about like, what did I have to do? So when I first started at my job, I came in, and the first day they literally just told me like, here's, you have to set up your dev environment, and they for some reason expected me to do it. And being a new developer, my day one, like, I was not sure where to start. So I actually had to ask a few developers out, and they had to help me out to set my development environment. And usually you have an IT guy or somebody who's going to set that up for you. But because I worked at a very small company and they weren't as organized, they kind of, threw you, out into the wild and expected you to be able to be productive and do stuff right away. So with that being said, it was really hard for me to get started. And once I finally had a senior developer help me set up my environment, I still did not know where to start because I didn't know the code. There was no kind of like, welcome to your first job, let me go through what we're doing. It was more like, here's the code base, you figure it out, and we're just going to assign some tasks for you and you're going to do them. And I hope that this is not the experience for you guys looking to start. And I hope you guys having, much more nicer way of integrating. But that was kind of like what my experience was. And a lot of people that I talk to, they tell me that this is not a typical experience. They say in most cases, there's going to be a period for 2 weeks where they're going to help you get acclimated to the environment, help you kind of make that transition into being able to be productive at work. And, and they'll have other developers who are going to guide you through the process, which was not the case for me. And that's why every day at work for the longest time, I was like, man, today is the day I'm going to get fired because I don't know what I'm doing. I would literally sit, there'll be, especially the first 2 weeks, I would sit staring at my computer, not knowing what to do. But over time, I was able to figure out what was happening and be kind of somewhat productive, and little by little, I kind of like got the hang of it. But that was a lot of stuff. And so like, I do want to, in this video, just look up different articles, talk about what are the expectations of being a junior developer, what should you be able to do, and I'd like to have a discussion about it. So if you guys have questions, let me know. Hey, Alejandro, greetings from Colombia. Well, great to have you here. I'm glad you're able to join us. We have Philip from San Francisco. Hey, Philip, hope you're doing great. Great to have you here as always. And hologram nunchucks. Yeah, that did sound crazy. And I'm amazed that I lasted after that initial period and ended up working at that company for a year and a half. Now, what I could say for you that there's many companies, and when you start with smaller companies, and my company is probably not the best example because they were so disorganized. They were making this transition going from a Windows application that they were developing, and they were going to roll out as a web application. And most of the developers there were old school C++ Windows guys, and they didn't have that many experienced web developers. So it was basically a bunch of chickens running with their heads cut off, trying to figure out what to do. So it was kind of like doomed from the start. because everybody had to figure out what to do. And that was like the hardest part. We didn't have any organization. We didn't like have any kind of plan. How do you go from developing a web application that's based on Windows application? And you wouldn't even go that way, like about it in terms of like try to make a web application that functions exactly like a Windows-based application. That's not how the web works. And so that was kind of tough and rough. But listen, like I learned a lot. And now at my new contract role, things work a little bit different. So initially when I started, the beauty of the project that I started with at my new job is that we were building it from scratch. So what's awesome about it, there was not that much legacy or old code that I had to learn. And so they have a designer that presented a mock-up and design. And the first step is building out the UI. And they gave me some mock-up data because we don't have the backend yet, but they gave me enough data to be able to at least create a functional UI. And my job is basically looking at the designer kind of layout. We actually used Adobe XD. That's what we're using for the layout and stuff. And so basically I get the design document, I get a story assigned to me, and they'll say create, this page. And then I would just work on creating this page. And basically what I would say as a junior, like you should be able to look at a layout, a mock-up, and be able to create it with whatever technology you're using. If it's HTML and CSS, that's what you use. If it's JavaScript and React, that's what you have to be able to do, but you have to actually be able to create the thing. And this kind of comes down to this idea of why I think Udemy courses don't really prepare you for a job, but more like they just prepare you to learn. But the preparation to be job ready, it really falls on top of your shoulders. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Let me check the comments here. Let's see here. We have what kind of projects really, what kind of projects really? Wow, prospective employers portfolio on a prospective employer. Like, Philip, I'm a little bit confused what the actual question is. So if you want to clarify that for me, I'd love to discuss it and talk about it. In terms of, expectations as a junior developer, let's take a look at some articles just to kind of see. And then I could talk and give my 2 cents about kind of what I went through and the process. So I randomly looked this stuff up because I was curious. I wanted to know if my kind of experience was normal. So I like how they say here, it's not uncommon to think that expectations of a junior developer are massively different what they are, and mentally sabotage the performance of many developers of the technical interview, thinking that the bar is higher than what they lead you to believe, and then you may exaggerate what you know, and you might not be able to get a job. And here they say hiring a junior developer is an investment in the long-term potential than the immediate payoff. And I guess that makes sense because a company is looking to take a chance on you, and they're looking to invest the money and training into you. And I guess that's one fact that I didn't experience at my current company, because at my company, everybody was disposable. They didn't look at a junior developer as someone who's an investment for the future. They looked at junior developers as someone who is basically cheap labor, who's going to basically do as much work as possible for low pay because they need the experience. But at the end of the day, our boss, he was like, you know what? If they want to leave, they'll leave. But I'll never give them a raise. I'll never help him grow in the company, because at the end of the day, he was literally like, I'm a slave owner. I'm going to crack that whip and you guys going to work. And so I think when you apply to a normal company, that's kind of what they're going to look at you as a junior developer, is an investment to help you grow and become productive in the company. And part of that, I think, is being getting to a point where the company invests in you to make sure that you're able to be productive, able to actually do the job. But, part of it is helping you get there. And I think that's important. So let's look what else they're saying here. Okay, let me switch screens here. So your first challenge is getting up and running. Let's see. So applications are often complicated, and that makes sense. And in order to do that, you will get access to the code base on GitHub or whatever system they're using. And this process can take a couple of days. And I'll talk about like this kind of what they're talking about in this article and kind of like my experience at my job. I think I mentioned a little bit about it. But you're going to be introduced to the code base, because at the end of the day, if you don't understand what they're working on, and you don't know your way around the project, even if they're asking you to do basic bug fixes, it'll be very difficult for you to kind of know your way around and knowing what to do. And so that's very important, that the first step when you're starting out at a new company is that they introduce you to the code base. You have a senior developer, and sometimes I heard that people do pair up with another developer, and the first couple of weeks you work together to help you familiarize yourself and get yourself in order. And so at my current role, right, they didn't really have that. They literally threw you into the wolves, and they were just like, hey, listen, this is what you got to do. You got to get after it. We're going to assign some tasks for you, and we're going to see how you do. And the problem I had is because there was no kind of introduction. There was no, anybody telling me like, hey, this is what we're working on. This is the big picture. Like, I was lost, and I had to literally figure that stuff out. And I was hesitant asking people because I felt like, because I didn't know any better, that's what happens. When you get hired, there should be an expectation where you just start producing from the start. And I'm realizing now that it's not the case. There's got to be this period where you familiarize yourself with the code. They help you set up your development environment. They help you get the code base, and they kind of walk you through the code base so you have basic understanding of where to start working on things. And that's kind of been the case at my new job, where when I got hired, that's exactly what they did. Instead of being like, hitting the ground running, they were like, here's the code base. They introduced me to the project. I talked to the designer, who gave me a big overview of what is expected of the project, what is the first step. And they basically assign stories and of tasks that you have to complete, and you just start on that task. You start on that story and you work on that. And then every day you would have a meeting where they discuss how far did you go, what your plan for today, and is there anything that has prevented you from accomplishing the goal, so you could ask for help. And this is kind of what this article that I randomly pulled up, they're saying the same thing. Your first meeting is your daily stand-up with the team. Most of the team, they practice agile methodology, where they basically that's a way for them to manage the project. And they basically ask you the most important questions. What did you do yesterday to know how far did you get? What's your plan for today? Talking about what are you currently working on? And is there anything that's preventing you from getting your responsibilities done? And then because the whole team is there, it's a great way for everybody to see where the team is. And if there's any blockers, you could address that in the meeting and go from there. And again, at my first job, that was not what was happening. It was so terrible at the company that I started with that every other developer I talked to, they're like, Paul, you got so unlucky because you got a company that wasn't really organized, and they didn't have any strategic ways for you to be able to be successful from the start. Because again, the company I started with, they do not care for the junior developers. It's more of like, get the cheap labor as you can, go through it. And that's not what it's like in most companies. And so I was expected to do big things, but based on this article, as a junior developer, they want to make sure that they set you up for success. So normally and typically, which was not typical of my job, is that they have you work on your first contribution, which is making small bug fixes. And to me, that makes perfect sense, right? Because if a junior developer starting out, they're brand new, they just graduated boot camp, college, or self-taught, whatever it is, having you get and be productive from day one is impossible. And plus, a good way to test where you are with your comfort is to assign some basic bug fixes. None of that happened at my company. None of that was like, there was none of that easy introduction process. It was more of like, hey, jump in, do this big thing. Oh, you can't do it. What the hell's wrong with you? And that's really not conducive for anybody. But as this article talks about, you'll start working on small bug fixes that involve 1 to 5 lines of code, nothing too crazy, to start to kind of get you ready and see what you're able to do, and also give you a way to get comfortable with the code base. And at my company, that's not what happened. The company that I started with now is a little bit different because I'm more experienced developer, and but at my first company, that's not what happened. And so it's very difficult for me to get productive because we weren't organized. And as you could see, that when you get a job as a junior web developer, the journey is designed to help you grow into the role, rather than my first company that I got hired, where they were basically like, you do as much as you can. If you're not productive, we'll just fire you and hire somebody else. And to me, what's crazy, I thought that was like the normal way, normal process. And I was like, shit, I just gotta, either do the work or get fired. And the stress was high. And now I'm looking at these articles and realizing that, man, my transition should have been much smoother. People should have been much nicer. They should have put me on smaller tasks to help me get acclimated to the production environment before throwing me to do large ticket items, which kind of what they had me do. And now I like it, all this stuff for me is kind of funny, because why couldn't I get a normal job that was the normal way of starting as a junior developer? So maybe for you guys, it'll be much easier. By the way, in the comments, let me know if you guys worked your junior roles, and let me know if you had a much easier transition. And let's take a look at the comments. Hey, Logic. Yeah, onboarding process kind of tells how organized the team is. Yeah, that's a great point. And based on my first job, I could tell that we were not organized at all. I could tell you that should have been my red flag, but at the same time, because it was my first company, I was willing to suffer a bit to get that experience. And let me tell you, after a year and a half of working, I feel comfortable that my new role that I'm starting, and I did get a contract role, at least for the next 2 months, the onboarding process was much nicer because I could tell this company is more organized. So let's take a look at the comments before I come back to kind of talking about the rest of the article that we're looking at, which is what are the expectations of junior devs? Because up to this point, I assumed it's you just have to hit your feet, ground running with your feet, and be productive as possible, and thinking that's a typical experience for all junior developers, which apparently is not the case. Apparently there's a very specific process to get you acclimated, and unfortunately for me, that's not the process my company did. So they kind of threw me in the trenches, and I don't think that's a good way to get acclimated. So let's look at it. Can you speak on the importance of having a strong portfolio site and a number of projects that should be in it to be taken seriously to a prospective employer as a front-end or a junior web developer? Yeah, that's a great question, Philip. And what I would say to you guys is that, learning to code for me was challenging. And I never believed that anybody could become, job ready in 3 months. And I know there are people done it from boot camps. And for me, knowing what I know now, I would say at a bare minimum, it's 6 months to a year of full-time study, because there's so much that goes into learning to code and getting to a point where you're confident enough that you're actually able to, add value to the company you're going to get hired. So one thing I'm going to tell you is your portfolio is the most important part, in the sense that you need to showcase projects that show that you are able to deliver on the work that is assigned to you. And not every portfolio project is created equal. And this is something that I've been learning, and I'll tell you how I started to choose how to pick a good project and how you should kind of challenge yourself to build your portfolio. So number one, any app that is like a toy app or something that doesn't either solve a specific problem that someone would pay you money for or something that you would build for a client, it's a waste to put into your portfolio. It's because at the end of the day, people want to see stuff that's actionable that a client would pay money for. So the type of projects you should have in your portfolio is something that someone pay money for. That's the basics of it. And what I would say, and that's why I'm reworking my portfolio, and the way I'm reworking my portfolio, I'm asking myself this question: what problem could I solve, or what is somebody going to pay me for? What type of project? So I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm working on a time tracking app, which allows you to track time per project that you're working on, and then it allows you to auto-generate an invoice. You're able to have multiple users that are working on multiple projects. So the scope of that application is big enough to kind of showcase not only do you understand how to create the UI, not only do you understand how to create multiple users and create authentication, and that certain authenticated users should only see the stuff that they're working on. So it's complex enough that if an employer looks at it, they're like, okay, this guy knows enough about development to at least be able to be productive from creating a UI and understanding basic CRUD operation of how to create, read, update, or delete data working with a project. And so that would be something that an employer would take seriously. So I know Coder Foundry recommends building a bug tracker because it shows enough complex functionality that gives your employer confidence that you know what you're doing. Another thing, let's say if you're starting out and you're not sure what should be your first project, maybe building something like a time tracker is more complex. So the first thing I would say, think of small businesses. They need a website, maybe it has blogging functionality. So in the bare minimum with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and possibly React, I would say you should learn React or some sort of front-end library to be competitive in terms of getting a job. But in the bare minimum, you should be able to yourself, based on a mock-up or a design, create that website from scratch. That's the bare minimum. And this is where I'm telling you where I feel like Udemy courses don't prepare you well enough to be productive at work, because none of the courses walk you through the process of how to build something from scratch. You're always coding something that the instructor already built for you, and you're just going through the steps and you're copying and pasting literally what the instructor is typing on the screen, and you're typing that same code. So for learning purposes, it's great. For your portfolio, it's terrible because you did not create that project from scratch. You did not build that project from scratch. And if you put your Udemy project course into your portfolio, you're doing yourself a disservice because it's not something you built from scratch. You literally just followed along side of the instructor and you use their work as your portfolio. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. If you're starting out and you have 0 projects in your portfolio, yeah, do that. But as you're looking to get closer to getting hired, you definitely need to have 2 to 3 projects that you created yourself from scratch that nobody else has, right? Nobody else could say, I did the same Udemy course. Check out how Paul's portfolio looks like John's portfolio. No, it should be your own project that you created, because if you don't create something from scratch, you're not going to be productive at work. That's like period. Like at my current role where I work, if I didn't know how to look at the mockup, how to convert the mockup into HTML and CSS or JSX working with React, how to add functionality, how to populate it with data that's coming from an API, how would I be productive at work? I just wouldn't be. And so unless you build a project that does that, you won't have the confidence to feel good about like yourself at work. Or if you do get hired, they'll quickly realize that you're not sure what to do. And that's why I tell everybody, you got to build projects from scratch. You got to work on developing the skill where you're able to create stuff not by following a tutorial, but by being like, oh, I need to create this application for a client. They need to do A, B, and C, and then you have to figure out how to design it, how to implement it, and how to deploy it, even if it's on a smaller scale. So let's take a look at the companies here. Hologram Nunchucks, does your company have a bad rating on Glassdoor? Yes. If you know where my LinkedIn, you guys could see what was the last company I worked for. You guys could do that research on your own. I am not going to go on Glassdoor on live to show you the terrible reviews that the company has, because like I don't want to be that type of person that kind of, you know, looks at companies and talks badly about them. It is what it is. And honestly, for me, they gave me a chance as a junior developer to get started, and they gave me opportunity to get hired. They believed in me. Regardless how they treated me doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, what happened is that I have a year and a half of experience. Getting my contract role was easier. I got a pay raise there as well. And now I'm interviewing for other companies, and they're taking me seriously as a candidate because I do have 1.5 years of experience working, regardless if the company was good or bad. Hey, Jose, how you doing? Glad to have you here, jumping on and joining us on this amazing live stream. I don't know if it's going to be an amazing live stream, but I randomly wanted to talk about this idea of like, what are the requirements as a junior dev? Because I think a lot of people kind of not sure where to start. And because my experience has been so unorthodox, because literally everything that you could do wrong, my company did in terms of onboarding me as a junior dev, that for me, I don't even know what the requirements are. So on this live stream, I was like, hey, they'll be cool. Let's kind of look at some articles and see what the expectation is, you know, getting started as a junior dev, working as a developer, you know, for your first year, and kind of being like, you know, what's up? What's the expectation? Jose, my first real job was also at a Mickey Mouse outfit. Doesn't like Disney World. I get it. Like, you know, people that just can't, they're like a bunch of cartoon characters. You can't take them seriously. Sometimes you're going to have a boss like that just don't know what they're doing themselves. Like my current role is not like that. The onboarding was much, much nicer. I actually have a team lead that I report to. And this is like another crazy thing about my company. And so talk about like what I've learned and what you all should practice even from the start. And sometimes it's tough to do when you're working by yourself. But this idea of version control and controlling your code, and following the process of where you're not just nilly-willy merging your code into the master's branch, but you're always pulling the master branch, you're starting a new branch based on the story you're working on or the feature you're working on. And when you complete whatever you had to do, you don't just merge it back into the master's branch, but you do a PR request, you do a pull request, and you have to have a lead on the team, whoever it is, to go over your code, review your code, give you feedback, make sure that there's no errors, make sure that the code is sound. And after it's approved, only then they merge the code, which my first company, we did none of that. And so everybody was willy-nilly merging their code into the main branch. We always had issues. Stuff was always breaking. And that's something that I didn't learn from my company, but I learned from reading articles on best practices of version control. So a pro tip for you guys, when you're building your personal projects, like everybody like sets up their and you always start with a master's branch. Whenever you're working on your project, break it down into features like, search bar functionality, whatever it is. Create a separate branch, that's specific to that functionality that you're working on. Work in that branch. Yeah, you might be working at home by yourself, right? And then after you complete the branch, pretend and do your own PR request, do a pull request. And granted, there's nobody else reviewing your code. You go and review your code and make sure that you did the best that you can and approve your pull request, and then merge the code into the main branch. Get into the workflow, even though you might be doing projects at home by yourself, but get into that routine of this idea of like separate branch for a separate feature or story. When you complete the branch, make sure you do a pull request, go through the process of reviewing that pull request, and then merging the changes only after it was approved. And none of that existed in my last company. And this company that I'm working on now, that's the process. Literally, I get a task assigned in a story. I look what I have to do. I do the work. Then I write a pull request, and I have a developer above me, and I tag him. It's his job to review my code. He'll review my code, and most of the time he'll be like, hey, Paul, the way you did it here, it's not really what I want to do. Here's the way that you should change it. Here's some articles you could read to kind of figure this out. And then I'll make the changes, and then he'll review them again, and then he'll be like, oh, you did a great job, looks good, and then he'll merge the pull request into the main code. And so that's what my job is. And I think having that feedback loop is very important, because that's how you're going to grow as a junior developer, is having someone review your code and give you feedback. And at my last company, that just did not exist. Let's take a look at the comments section here. So from Hologram Nunchucks, what tech are you using to build your current project? Great question. So we are using React, and because it's a smaller team, we do have a designer, but to help to make sure that we're able to kind of move through the project very quickly, because we have a strict deadline, we are using Bootstrap, specifically React Bootstrap. So it's React components made with Bootstrap. And we're using SAS, and for managing the database, we're using Postgres on the back end, and we integrate it using GraphQL via the API. So basically React, GraphQL, and SAS. And that's basically it on the front end. And the back end currently, because the whole idea is to create a minimum viable product, I guess, and get it released as quickly as possible, we're actually using Strappy on the back end, which is basically Node.js based API. And after that's done, we'll see if the application gets steam, and if we need to, the normal backend for the rest of their projects is actually done with Django and Python. It's a financing company, so they do a lot of math on the back end. And a lot of data stuff, which I don't have to do, thank God. But if that's the case, we have backend developers that will create a backend with Django and Python. And because they're using GraphQL, and as long as the schema matches, it'll be very easy for us to transition the front end from using Strappy to using their Python backend. Let's see. Hey, KG609, what's up? Glad to have you here. Good point. I like to think that it's, in the end, the bad devs end up at the bad companies and vice versa. I think I would say, if you've been working as a dev for a while and you're not learning from your mistakes and you're making the same mistakes, then you're a bad dev. But if you're a junior developer, like when I was starting out, you kind of don't know what the best practices are and what is the proper etiquette to be a successful developer. And I think that's part of, proper onboarding to help you set a path for yourself where you grow into your role and able to go from junior to mid-level. And I think companies that see value as an investment in their junior devs will make sure you become a good developer. And over time, because at the end of the day, it costs money to hire new people. It's much cheaper to actually just train a developer from the get-go to do things the right way and have them stay at your company. That's just a fact. And I saw it in my company where our turnover was so high that our boss was losing money, because every time he would hire somebody new and don't train them correctly, not only were they, not lasting with the company long enough, but they were writing terrible code because there's no feedback to help them make better code. And so every person they hired would write bad code, then they would leave, and then you just have bad code on top of bad code. So it kind of just basically turns into this nightmare of duct tape code that nobody wants to work with. And I think that was the mistake with our company, not investing in the juniors and helping them learn the proper way from the get-go to work on the project, to make sure that they're not committing bad code. And like I said before, because there was no real review process, nothing was starting these junior devs like me who had no direction commit like good code. You're like, you easily able to commit like your mistakes to master, and it would be weeks or months before someone would find that out, which is insane. And that's not how it works at my current company. At my current company, first of all, like if I commit bad code, my PR will get rejected right away, and I would have to fix it, meaning that the code that I commit to for a pull request should have no errors. It should be functional. It should work as a bare minimum. And that's the only time they will look at the PR to review it, is when I committed good code that has bare minimum, no errors, and works. The thing that they told me to make work does the thing that it needs to do. And then they'll review it, and then they'll talk about, oh, you need to change this or this. But functionally, it should work. And with like that being said, like that's how you prevent people from committing bad code and having this feedback from mid-level developers to junior developers or senior developers to junior developers, whoever it is. That's how you create better developers. You help people grow into the role. And looking at this article, I know I've been mumbling and talking like throughout. Let's take a look. And this is exactly what they say. Initially, when you start, they have you work on doing small bug fixes, right? And then eventually they make you work with another developer on larger tickets to help you, number one, to get acclimated to the code base. If you have any questions, you have that mid-level developer to help you answer your question, and more importantly, to help you if you're making blatant mistakes. And that is a very important part of making sure that you're helping these juniors get into a position where they're able to grow into the role, able to become successful, and get the job done. And that was not the case at my last company. And unfortunately, this is why I wanted to have this stream where I try to talk about like what are the expectations of a junior dev, because at my company that was never clearly set, and more importantly, I had no idea what it is. And I don't want to give you guys advice based on my first terrible job experience, not because of me, but because of how disorganized the company was. And more importantly, I want to talk to you guys about the fact that when you start with a good company, there's an onboarding process to help ease you guys into being able to do work and being productive. So let's take a look at some comments here. How important is knowledge of mathematics? Do you recommend that it's a good idea to get proficiency with probability and statistics or other types of math? Philip, that's a great question. I think it really depends the company you work for. If you're working at a place where they're working with a lot of data, and part of it is for you to be able to write those calculations that help figure that out, then yes, you need to be know the math. And in most cases, that's not the case, right? And unless you're doing data science or machine learning, where math, the whole field is math heavy. My friend who's a senior developer, he does React UI stuff, working with components, and a lot of that complex stuff gets handled on the back end anyway. And so all of that stuff is already done. So you don't need to know a lot of math or any math for a lot of roles, unless it's a specific role that's dealing with data science or math specific stuff. So I'll give you an example. The stuff that I'm doing as a front end at my current company, I don't really need to know math. I just have to understand how to get data from the back end, where all that stuff is calculated, and display it on the front end, and be able to, do basic functionality like, login functionality, like filtering functionality. But in terms of actually, calculating the data, that's not my responsibility. Now, if I was a back-end developer at my current company, math and statistics and everything that you talk about would be a requirement. They would not hire me as a back-end developer if that was not the case, because this is a financial company. That's what they deal with. And so if I were to be like a full stack or a back-end developer in this role, I would actually have to brush up on my math, because that would be a requirement. But that's not the fact in a lot of companies. So great question. And KG609, I've never collaborated with any other team members in GitHub professionally. I've only used TFS so far. Yeah, and that's like the hard part when you're working as, self-taught developer, or you're working yourself. Hey, we got Dennis here. Man, by the way, Dennis has a huge channel, obviously, and he does a lot of Django and Python stuff. Dennis, if you're still listening to this, I just want to say that I just started a contract role. And like I do React development with JavaScript or whatever, the front end, but their back end is with Django. And I actually got your course you did on Udemy, where you took what Brad Travesty did and converted it to use Python for React, to prepare myself to better understand how to work with a Django API. So thanks for that. It's awesome that you released that course just in time for me to get a better understanding of how to work with Python and React, which is something that I'm now learning, because that's kind of what I do at work. So hey, great to have you here for a bit. And let's see here, hologram nunchucks. Let's see, does your company have a performance budget that has to be met with each pull request? Now, not where I'm currently at, so I'm not even sure what that is, to be honest with you. And like maybe an example would be of a performance budget. And what do you mean by that? In my case, it's literally they like review my PR request, and if I have to make changes, I'm responsible for those changes. And what I would tell you guys, if there's something that you're not sure how to do, don't try to spin your wheels and figuring out yourself. As the mid-level or senior developer who's in charge of you, and be like, hey, listen, I'm not sure how to do, because the worst thing you could do is waste time and then 3 days later be like, oh, I'm not sure how to do this. So don't be shy asking for help, because they'll point you into the right direction. And a lot of time in their case, it's very easy for them to do, and you're able to see the example that they provide and figure the rest of it out. Yeah, Dennis, love your channel. You do a lot of great stuff. And like I said, one of the best Python channels out there. And, I want to say thank you, because literally, like, I got this role, and your channel is an amazing resource for me to help me grow into my current role. So that's pretty awesome. Oh my God. Hello, I desperately need help. My laptop is broken. I was told there was a virus in the CPU. How do I resolve that? Bro, that's very, I get it. You need a computer to work, and that's probably what the IT department should do. If you have a virus on your computer, to be honest with you, because I'm a developer, I have no desire fixing laptops or fixing computers. The best way is to have a Mac. You don't get too many viruses in that. But then if I had a Windows computer and I had a virus and I didn't know what to do, I'll just reinstall everything. Not saying it's a good strategy, but it's listen, that's what I do. To just being honest with you, not an IT guy, which sounds weird because I have no desire of fixing my own computer. So talked about the idea of expectations of a junior developer. And my first company was terrible, as you clearly heard from my horror stories. And for those of you who are just starting out, you'll know that you're with a good company because they will have a very good onboarding process to help you ease your way into being able to be productive with the code and being able to do the things that you have to do. And looking at these articles, that's basically what majority of things happen. It's like you get started, they introduce you to the code base, they set up your development environment, you go and do your daily meetups, and as a junior, they assign some smaller bugs for you to start kind of getting your feet wet, and then they'll do some sort of pair programming where you work on larger ticket items together before they start assigning tasks to you individually. And that's kind of what I've heard from a lot of people that had nice and easy kind of like transitions. That's kind of everybody. That's what they're telling me. That's what happens. I wish that was the case for me when I started out. But my company, they just threw you to the wolves and they expected you to do everything and stuff like that. So, you know, that's the expectation. With that being said, by the way, talked about being job ready and being able to feel like you have the confidence to do the work. And I'm not sure if there's a lot of people talk about it, because there's so many people that either made it and they just talk about their success, or maybe because like truth hurts, because nobody wants to be told that things are difficult. Nobody wants to be told that it takes work and effort to, number one, develop the skills to be confident enough that you could actually pass an interview and get hired. But then also at the end of the day, you know, you have to be productive. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it. And so when I first started on this journey, like I started learning to code around 35, like taking it more seriously. I'm 40 now, and I got my first job when I was 39. Is that nobody wants to discourage you, especially if they're selling courses. Nobody wants to tell you how hard this is. So that's why there's plenty of videos online. They're like, listen, in 3 months you could become a developer. And I know a lot of people have some crazy success stories. And I would say like someone like Dennis Ivey, I would say he's an extraordinary person. And I know this from the fact that he's successful on YouTube. That's my barometer now. If you're successful on YouTube, it's like such a grind that you could basically do anything else to be more successful. Like if you're successful on YouTube, it's because you hate yourself and you're willing to grind and grind and grind. So I know he's an extraordinary person that has very strong work ethic, and he will accomplish the goal that he wants. But for normal average people like you and I, it did not take me 3 months to learn to code. It not even take me 6 months. It not even take me a year. It took me 3 years of hard work. Maybe I'm not smart as you guys, but it was a really difficult process for me. There was a lot to learn. And to this day, I still have a strong case of imposter syndrome, because I still don't feel like I know enough to be productive. And so with that being said, when you're learning to code and you're looking to make that transition, switching careers, or you're looking to get started, and a lot of times like on my channel I talk about switching careers in your 30s, and my demographic is people who, you know, had a different career and they're looking to get into web development. And maybe some of you guys are younger and you are, you know this is what you want to do, and like maybe you've been coding for a couple of years already, maybe you're going to school for coding, but for a majority of people, they're switching careers and they're brand new. They never had coding experience. The realistic expectation of getting a job and getting hired is that be prepared to do a lot of work and studying for basically the rest of your life if you're looking to get into any development role, because number one, things change. There's always new technology that gets introduced. And so if you're not learning constantly, you're going to get obsolete as a developer really quickly. So you're constantly learning, constantly studying. And on top of that, coding is not easy. It is very difficult. And when you start to learn to code, once you get past the hello world applications and you start working on more harder problems, you realize how complex some of the things can get. And that's why I want you to know that you have to set your expectations correctly and understand that it's okay if things don't make sense right away. It's because it's a very, very difficult thing to learn and very hard, and it takes a lot of work and effort. And so the whole point of this channel is for anybody that's looking to switch careers. I don't want to sell you a dream of making more money. I don't want to sell you the idea that in 3 months anybody could do it, because you could be different. I was different, and it took me much longer than expected. And so like I want to make sure that anybody who's looking to switch careers understands that. And you guys set realistic goals. You set realistic constraints for what you're going to study to make sure that in 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years, however long it takes you, you have the necessary skill to get hired. So coming back to this idea of like, I want to get hired as a junior developer, but at the end of the day, if you're not able to build a project yourself from scratch, it is going to be very difficult. It's going to be very hard for you to have the confidence to know that you could be productive at work. And it's just a fact. There's like I don't see myself having a job right now if I wasn't able to build something from scratch, even if though like I do have to still use Googling and like a lot of cases, like at least I know the process. I know how to get it going. I know how to find answers. But if you can't do that, you're not going to be able to get a job or be productive. It's unfortunate, but a lot of people make you feel like it's easy, and it really isn't. It really is not. Like, I'm not going to lie to you guys, because I don't want any one of you guys to go on this journey and then be like, Paul lied. He said anybody could do it. It's going to take 3 months, whatever. No, that's not the fact. So, Josh, I'm 37 and work in the high performance auto industry, but I wanted to build a career as a full stack developer. I'm glad I found this channel. Hey, Josh, thank you for being here. And I'm going to tell you this, like I started learning like programming at 35, 36, but I wasn't really serious about it. Now I'm 39. Well, I was 39 when I got my first real dev job. I'm 40 now. In July, I'm going to be 41. So at 37, if you were to set realistic expectations, I would say if you really devote yourself and dedicate time and you have a focused plan, you could get into the field within a year for sure as a junior dev. But that's going to take a lot of work. But within 2 years for sure, because I could see when I started taking coding seriously, when I started being more focused and set kind of constraints and had a path that I organized for myself, I was able to get there. And part of it is, watching other YouTubers who've done it. And that's why I kind of have a channel called Coding After 30, because I'm someone who was in his mid-30s, decided to switch careers, and it was really hard for me. And like, I don't need everybody to like my channel, but those people who are my age or similar situations and looking to switch careers, I want to be the channel that gives them the real truth, real advice that will help you not to waste time and get to the job that you want. And with that being said, setting constraints of what you learn. You can't learn everything. You have to decide, are you going to do React and JavaScript, or are you going to do PHP with WordPress or Laravel, whatever. Don't do that stuff unless, whatever, just don't do that stuff. Are you going to do just Python development, or are you going to use ASP.NET and C#? You need to figure out what that path for you, because if you try to do everything, you're going to end up nowhere. That's very important. And Dustin, I love the realism. I'm here 37 and switching careers, just started learning a couple months ago. Dustin, you could definitely do it. I'm glad that you're part of our community, because honestly, guys, you guys are awesome. Like, I'm some dude on the internet, like, just talk about my experience. Sometimes my live shows are awesome, sometimes they're not. But what's really awesome is you guys, the community, because without you, I would not exist. You guys bring in the awesome positivity, and I'm always like willing to help and give you like the real deal of what I'm experiencing. And I'm no expert, by the way, but I am still in the trenches. I'm still fighting the good fight of trying to progress as a developer. And it's not easy. For me, it's not easy. And then I think like what's funny about YouTube is that, I will say this because YouTube is not my job. YouTube is just a way for me to talk to you guys about my path. Like, my job, I'm a developer. Maybe one day I'll make money on YouTube, but I have no incentive. But one thing that I hear is that most developers who are really good at what they do, they don't have YouTube channels. They don't need it. They're making 6 figures at their job. I have a friend who's a senior developer. He makes over 6 figures at his job. He doesn't have a YouTube channel. He doesn't want to talk about, coding. And I think what happens, a lot of people, they start a YouTube channel about coding, and it goes 2 ways. They're not as good as programming, but they figure out the YouTube game. They start selling some merch. They start selling some courses, and they become successful on YouTube. Nothing wrong with that, right? Then there are people who start on YouTube, and I'm sure there's some YouTubers that you watched before that no longer have a YouTube channel or don't post regularly because they started a YouTube channel sharing their journey about, how they're learning to code, building a brand so they could get, noticed by other people, and then eventually they get a job. They work there for 2-3 years. They get to a point they're making 6-figure salary, and they're like, yeah, YouTube is not worth it because the amount of effort I put on YouTube. And then they start working as a developer. And so like the goal for me on this channel is to share my story with you and do it in a way where I'm telling you the truth, because like I don't want to make money on YouTube by selling your dream. I just want you to know, hey, it's hard. You need to do the work. It's going to be difficult because at the end of the day, I want to be a developer, not a YouTuber. Although I love talking to you guys on YouTube, and that's why I keep doing it. And maybe one day, maybe that will change in 5-6 years and I'll have some courses to sell for you guys. But for now, my goal is to become a developer, get a job as a developer, and do that. And if I could help you guys get there, and do it in a way where you're not making the same mistakes I made, then hey, mission accomplished. And that is really awesome. So let's look at the comments. A lot of great comments here. Again, thanks for joining me. Hit the like button if you like what we're talking about today. So hologram nunchucks, I graduated from a boot camp with a massive imposter syndrome. Stopped me from applying. I hear it never goes away. Just something you got to deal with. And it's true. Like, I still have it. I still have imposter syndrome. And I hope that you're back to applying hologram nunchucks. I hope you're working. Don't give up. I'm going to tell you this. The hardest thing is to break into the field, regardless if you're self-taught, boot camp. Maybe it's easier with the degree. It's not me. I don't have a degree in anything, so I wouldn't know. But I'll tell you this. Your first job is going to seem like it's impossible to get. But your second job is going to be easier. And then your third job is going to be even easier. Where when you're breaking in, having a portfolio is super important. But after 2-3 years working in the field and getting some past job experience, people are not even going to look at your portfolio. They're just going to go based on your experience, on your resume, and the companies you work for. So it does get easier. It does get better. And, don't give up. Keep at it, because that's the only way to do it. This channel helps keep the imposter syndrome at bay enough for me to keep going. Hey, brother, keep it up. Keep going. I'm glad for all of you guys here that you guys are getting some value and hearing my journey, hearing the horror stories that I have. Like at the beginning, when I was talking about how my experience starting as a junior developer was not typical. It was very difficult. They did not have a good onboarding process. They did not care about the juniors because at the end of the day, the strategy that my boss had is basically hire a junior, crack the whip, get them to do as much work for the least amount of pay as possible, and then get rid of them. And I'm going to tell you this right now, and I did not want to share this early on because you got to understand, I got my job in the midst of COVID starting to take hold of the world, in the midst where people started to lose their jobs. And so for me, I was like, listen, I'm going to do development. I don't care what they pay me. So my first job, they paid me $13.75 an hour. I used to be self-employed. I used to run a business. Like I used to make like way more money than that. And taking a hit and working somewhere for $13.75, number one, if you have a family, you have kids, that's a tough pill to swallow. My daughter is 21. I am single now. Well, not anymore. Like I'm engaged now, but at that time when I started making that transition, I went through a divorce. I was by myself. I didn't have that many responsibilities, so I was able to, and I had some savings from my previous job that I was able to take a hit and work for $13.75 because I knew that was an important part, because the experience that I would get, even though the company sucked, would help me get the next role. Like I'll tell you right now, I make 3 times as much than I did before, almost 4 times as much. And so do the work, pay your dues. Hopefully you don't have to pay them as hard as I had to pay them. Hopefully you get a good company started with. Hopefully your pay is going to be at least in mid 40s, just so you could have a normal living life and not live off rice and beans like I had to do it in my tiny apartment that I still have. My tiny apartment, this is it. This is my apartment. I got 2 cats. We barely could fit in here. But the point is, especially when you're switching careers, you are going to be making sacrifices. But with that being said, though, within a year, year and a half, you're going to get enough experience. You're going to start getting more opportunities, more jobs. They're going to start you off, 55, 65. And 2-3 years, it's not unheard of hitting a 6-figure income. It's not unheard of. If you're willing to do the work, put in the hustle, you're all going to get there. And this is what's crazy for me. I'm going to tell you this right now. I started working as a developer at 39, making $13.75 an hour. A year and a half afterwards, I'm currently making $40 an hour, which is crazy, going from 13.75 to 40. And I just want to tell you this up front because I want to be honest with you guys. Because those of you who are willing to do the work, putting in the hustle, I'm not saying that my journey is going to be like your journey, but within a year and a half, I went from super low pay to decent pay, right? And I know that 2-3 years from now, I'm going to be making over like 6 figures. It's just the nature of the business. So if you're good, you do the work, you're going to get there within. So think about it. 3 to 5 years, you could go from making nothing to making 6-figure income. What other businesses or jobs where this is a possibility? And that's why I tell people, if you have the capacity for it, of sitting in front of the computer for long periods and smashing your head against the desk because you're trying to figure out, like, persevere, go through the steps, and you could change your life. Like, people tell me, like, everybody in my family, they were like, why are you switching careers? You're so old. I was like mid-30s at the time. When I really started pursuing it, I was like 37, 38. And people like, what are you doing? You had a successful business. Just stay in your business, work. You're making good money. Why are you switching careers? I had many reasons. I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA. It's a brick and mortar business, ran a school, made good money. But number one, got injured, had ACL surgery. I couldn't raise my hands over my head. I was so hurt. Thank God I quit. Now I could have functionality in my hands. Also, when COVID hit, I would have went out of business if I stayed in the same field, because I would not be able to, because for 3 months, you're not allowed to have a gym open. So I would have had to float like at least 3 months of business expenses for the school, because I still had rent. I would have had rent if I never switched careers, and that would have killed me. Like, it would have, like, so many friends that I had who had martial art businesses, 50% of them lost their businesses and had to go back to work doing something else. So the reason switching careers is because, number one, it's fast growing. You could go to 100K within 3 to 5 years. Number two, I work remote. After COVID, there's more opportunity because now it's the norm, working remote, and it's a way for everyone to, like, it's an amazing, like, you have the freedom to work remotely if, like, majority of the time now, and another reason is because it's not physical. You use your brain, and, like, it's amazing. You could work from your computer, you could work from anywhere. What am I like all I need a computer to be productive. And with my fiance moving to Texas, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, Texas is nice. Where else can we move? Like, it's easy. Like, you're more flexible. So that's the appeal that I have. And I would say that that's why I do it. And I think coding is a great equalizer to, allow you to do something where you have opportunity to make great income. But at the same time, it's really difficult. And you do have to kind of, be willing to put in the work and the price. So let's take a look at the comments. I know I'm talking all this stuff. Jose, I work in the telecom industry and use AutoCAD. I feel imposter syndrome most days of the week. Yeah, I mean, like, regardless of what you like, I don't even know how to use AutoCAD. I'm not in that industry also, but I know it's difficult and hard. And Josh, I'm assuming you talk about that you want to learn everything, and that to stay focused, you need to pick one thing. And 100%, you need to pick one thing and you have to stick with it. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out and you're not going to be able to learn enough of, like, in-depth things that you need to know to get hired. So I started with Ruby on Rails. I did PHP. I did C++. I did C#. I did whatever the hell the popular language was. It was only until I decided to focus on only JavaScript and React that I was able to learn enough, not just like in depth to be able to build stuff from scratch. And at the end of the day, that's what you got to do to get a job. So definitely focus on what you need to do to get things going. And let me say hello first to a long time subscriber. Where did you go? Hey Luke, great to see you here. I hope you're doing great. I hope I haven't heard from you for a while. I hope that you're doing things in your life that are getting stuff done, but glad to have you here. Let me know in the comments like what you've been up to. I miss you, bro. Let's look at the comments. Keep them coming. Yep. I already clicked this one. That one I clicked. Okay. Tiff, I'm very identified with your career switch after 30. I mean, like, there's plenty of people that are switching careers. And so I want to be the channel for people in their mid 30s, late 30s, early 30s switching careers. And I want to be the proof that it is possible. But with that being said, it is a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a lot of work. And like, I know a lot of people who watch my channel also watch Coding Phase and other channels. And what you have to understand is that minimum effort is not going to get you anywhere. And so it doesn't matter if you watch my channel, Coding Phase channel, somebody else's channel, insert name. The reason Coding Phase is successful is because he puts massive effort into everything he does. The reason why I am going to be successful, not on YouTube, but in my development and career, is because I put massive effort into achieving my goal. And don't fool yourself. If you want to make this transition and switch careers, you too have to put this massive effort to get things done. Do not sugarcoat the amount of work that it's going to take, because that will set unrealistic expectations. And when you don't accomplish your goal, you're going to be really disappointed. You know what I mean? I just want to tell you this. Here's, let's see here. What about coding after 40? I'm 46, starting to learn about 2 months ago. Don't give up, guys. A great channel, by the way. Congrats. Hey, thanks, Marcelo. Yeah, it's never too late to learn to code. The thing that I would say is that the older you are, pick the stack that you know is in demand. Like, I chose React for that specific reason. Make sure that what you're learning has a market out there for jobs, and focus all your effort in becoming really good at that one thing. Because the older you are, the less time you have to devote towards what you're doing. And the most important thing to do is, you can't learn everything. Like, I had to say no to a lot of things and give up learning things because I know I can't be good at anything, like everything. So I pick very particular things, because being an older developer, I want to make sure that the thing that I'm learning, I'm able to be really good at to stay competitive with some of these younger guys. And what also becomes more important is making sure that you get your portfolio built and you're able to do the work and you showcase in your portfolio, and not be afraid to get yourself out there. And that's why I have this YouTube channel, because you do have to promote yourself and get out there and start going to meetups, start meeting other developers on LinkedIn and building connections. Because being older, being in your 30s, like me in my early 40s and older, the best way and the easiest way to get a job is by having a referral of someone that you know that could speak of you to somebody else that will give you opportunity to get hired. By sending out resumes yourself, the truth is that process is very difficult, and the older we are, the harder it is. It's not impossible. I've done it. I know someone who's older than I am has done it, but I just want to be honest with that. So be willing to do that work to get going. Hamza says everybody's looking for 3 years experience, and that's absolutely true. Everybody puts must have at least 3 years of experience, must have at least 3 years of, and the truth is sometimes you don't. And what I'm telling you, the fact that they have 3 years of experience, you should still apply, and you should be prepared for the interview. You should have a good portfolio that you could talk about. And I look at it this way. A lot of times you'll go in, if you do poorly on the interview, they'll be like, oh yes, we're really looking for 3 years experience. It's like a talking point for them to be like,
you're not strong enough of a candidate to get hired. So they'll be like, oh, you don't have 3 years of experience. But if your portfolio is awesome, you're able to do the work and you able to talk about what you've done in the interview, they might forgo. I talked to a recruiter who works with a company that if you don't have a bachelor's degree, doesn't have to be in computer science, but if you don't have a bachelor's degree, they're not going to look at your resume. But she's a recruiter. If I talk to her, and she basically placed like 7 out of 10 people that she placed in that company did not have degrees. So I was like, how's that even possible? How were they able to get a job if the requirement having a degree is a must? And what she told me is like, it's a must if you're applying yourself. Like if you applying by yourself, not using a recruiter that's able to advocate on your behalf and put in the good word, and if you also don't have a good portfolio, yeah, then it's a must. But every company will make an exception if you're the best of what it is that you're looking to do. So the truth is, yes, you need experience. Yes, you need this, and that. But if you're good at what you're doing, you put in the work, you have a great portfolio, you're able to talk about the projects that you've built to show and give and instill confidence in your employer, they might forego that and hire you. Like I've seen that happen, and it's like you gotta advocate for yourself, you gotta promote yourself, you gotta be good at what you're doing, right? So like that's what I was telling you, you need massive effort to move the needle and get the job. I've had so many interviews where I got basically denied, and I just keep at it. I keep going, and I get better and better and better, and with each interview I get more comfortable, and now I'm starting to get more and more opportunity. But you guys have to understand that it takes work, it's very hard, but you got to keep at it, you got to keep moving forward. And this is a great point here. Yeah, Jose, that's a great point. Yeah, a lot of industries need programmers, and you have to find a niche that works for you. It's not easy, but it is possible, 100%. And there are a lot of freelance fields and opportunities. And I know people that have minimum, like, forget I said minimum, have zero coding, but they figured out how to use Elementor with WordPress. And they're able to build websites with WordPress or powered by WordPress, and all of their design is designed with page builders like Elementor, and they're able to sell their services. They know what their service is, they know what their offering is, and they're able to make good money. And that's kind of how I started before switching into React development. When I had no experience, the way I started to build my experience is basically trying to work as a freelancer and try to build WordPress website for small businesses. And that's how I got my kind of first job as a front-end WordPress developer, is because I've done websites in the past for clients, and that's how I broke into the field. And so if you don't mind being not called a real developer, which I don't know why people say that, like that you still develop, you're still making money, who cares that maybe you're not coding everything from scratch? You could make a good living with WordPress and page builders. I know a lot of people that do that. I decided to go into React because I really enjoy coding and I wanted to do more of it. But if I was working as a freelancer, I would only focus on WordPress and page builders, at least at the moment. And thanks, Josh. Man, I'm really slow on these comments. Luckily that my lives are like not that busy. It's very easy for me to like catch up with everything. Man, Hologram, you're welcome, bro. I'm just glad to have you here. And like, yeah, like I'm glad that inspires you guys to keep going. But at the end of the day, it's like you're the ones doing the work. So whatever you accomplish, the credit is on you guys. The credit is on you. For everyone over 25, look up Andrew Huberman and check out How to Learn Skills Faster. Huberman Lab podcast 20. He talks about, he's actually an amazing guy. Great podcast too. And it is very helpful. Yeah, and honestly true, like learning how to learn better is definitely going to help you. How to learn faster or being effective in your learning will definitely help you get to where you guys need to go faster. Super. And I'm really big on trying to become not only better at coding, but more effective and efficient and learning strategies. So yeah, keep the questions going. Love the talking to you guys. because honestly, like, without you guys, this channel would not exist. I would not exist. Like, it's kind of hard talking to yourself. But kind of like talk about getting your first job and talk about my experience versus expectations. Just kind of, if you start joining us late, it happens. You could always rewatch from the beginning. But the point is, when I first started, I did not know what to expect or what my responsibilities would be as a junior developer. And unfortunately, the company that I started with, it was not the best company for new developers, because at the end of the day, they just wanted to take advantage of cheap developers. And so they would hire a bunch of juniors, have them do as much as they can. And if they didn't perform, fire them. They did not put any effort or investment into them, because that's not what they wanted. And I did not have a proper onboarding process. I did not have a team lead that would direct me and guide me to help me grow into my role. And that was all unfortunate, because at the end of the day, it did not help anybody. And I'm hoping that when you guys get your first role, that you'll have a better company than I had, where they treat you, a junior developer, as an investment in their company, and they will help you grow, not only to be able to be productive at the company that you started, but also being able to take your skills to the next level. And you're at a good company is because they'll take care of you in terms of helping you getting up and running. They'll show you how to set up your dev environment. They'll show you how to connect to the code base with Git. They'll help you, get started, walk you through the code, show you where you're going to be working. Then they're going to, on your first meeting, assign you small bug fixes or tasks to kind of help you get accustomed to the code, help you get familiarized with the code base, doing like simpler things and bug fixes to kind of make sure that you're slowly getting accustomed to their workflow. And then that they have a pair programmer where on the larger ticket items, they'll have you work with somebody else alongside to help you get to being productive effectively and efficiently, and give you guidance that the next few tasks that you're able to do on your own, it will be much easier. And that's how you're at the right place, because they have this progression to help you get started. And I hope that that's what your experience will be. But at the end of the day, though, if you don't have a portfolio, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, if you don't have a good resume, it's going to be very hard to get the job. And when I'm talking about portfolios, it should not be broken applications. It should not be Udemy tutorials. Maybe when you're starting out, putting a Udemy tutorial out there is fine. But I went through my portfolio and got rid of all my Udemy projects in my portfolio. And I only put things that I built myself from scratch, using the technologies that I want to get a job with. Because at the end of the day, having Udemy portfolios that I followed somebody else built do not serve me well at all. They don't help me get the confidence needed to be productive. So make sure that as soon as possible, you start building your own projects, you start building your own portfolios, so you could confidently talk about them in your interview to show your potential employer that you have some level of competency. If you don't start doing it, if you just keep pushing these Udemy tutorials into your portfolio and wondering why you're not getting a job, is because number one, everybody, all these recruiters, all these people, how many portfolios they see, how many projects they see, and they probably all saw like 1,000 Cold Steel portfolio pieces or Brad Travesty pieces or insert Udemy instructor portfolio projects. They don't stand out. When you come in with something that is your original work, that's something that's going to give you a lot more authenticity in terms of like, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. It's not just a portfolio that he copied from some Udemy course. It's something he created himself. And that's why, yeah, it's not a shortcut. You do need to put the work, but that's what I would recommend you guys do if you want to increase your chances. And we are working on a community project. I have a Discord channel. You can go to codingafter30.com, hit the link on the right for the Discord, and join us. I'm not as live on Discord yet. I've been really busy with work, but if you're looking to build a portfolio that will help you get hired, keeping up with the community project is very important. I also talk about it on some of our other YouTube videos. I'll make another one. But if you're just starting out, you're not sure what to build, your first step should be building a full website with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And don't design it yourself. You're not a graphic designer. You're not a designer unless that's what you're going for. You're a developer. So look up some mock-ups. And that's kind of like what I did. I looked up a mock-up and I recreated the design using HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And that should be your first goal. And here, I'll show you the project that we built. So if you're not sure what to build, start there. Create a responsive website that is built with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because that's the bare minimum you need to know in order to be like productive and be able to get hired. And so I'll show you two projects that you should, as an example, to help you guys kind of decide what is the fidelity of a type of project that you should have that kind of showcases that you at least know HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And so let me pull these up for you guys here. Let's see here. Let's see. Yeah, so if you're looking to get started, here's and this was a Udemy project of Brad Travis's HTML and CSS course. Now, here's one thing. I tell you, don't use Udemy courses, projects in your portfolio. So this is not in my portfolio. But also, if you did take Brad Travis's course, you'll see that this website doesn't look like what he made. So at least make it different enough. But the fact that this came from a Udemy course, it used to be, and this is responsive, by the way, if you're wondering, you guys should make responsive websites. You see how it changes. You need to be comfortable with that. But the point is, I'm not using this in my portfolio, at least at this point. When I first started out, I did have this in my portfolio. But like, my goal right now is make sure you're doing original work. So anyway, with that being said, here's the original project that we built for our community projects, and this is your first step. You should be able to build HTML and CSS project that integrates HTML, CSS, and I'm using JavaScript validation. So look, I can't send the form unless you write and add, proper, required data. So like, it will turn green if it's correct. And by the way, for full name, it would only take alphabetical stuff. So if I try to put numbers, right, a name does not have numbers. So I'm doing form validation with JavaScript. That's something should be this functionality of scrolling back to the top, unscroll my menu, hiding and showing is JavaScript functionality. And I still need to add a image slider and some sort of modal, just a little bit more JavaScript functionality to flush out this. But that should be your first project, is to build a website, HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And by the way, after I finish it, I'm going to replace all this fake data with actual data. I'm going to pretend like a client came to me and they're like, can you build me a portfolio site? And I'm like, okay. And so I'm going to put their information, I'll put my real information and deploy their site. And second step would be, if you made it this far, is to recreate the same website using React.js. And that's a great way for you guys to dip your feet into React by taking an existing project like this one with HTML and CSS and JavaScript and recreating with React. And so once I finish the basic JavaScript functionality of this, that's going to be step 2. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, is rebuild this application using React. And as you could see, it's also responsive, which is very important, making sure that depending on the screen size, as you shrink or expand, your app shrinks and expands accordingly, because you want it to look really good on, on mobile and, on, let's say what the hell you call it, iPads or what have you. And so it's very important for you guys to, at least at a bare minimum, be able to build an HTML and CSS JavaScript website from scratch. And then the second step is learn enough React to be able to recreate the same project with React JavaScript. And then you could move on building more complex applications. Here, I'll show you one here. So after you build your HTML and CSS project, after you build your first React application, another good project is to, oops, I already showed this one, is to build something where you're connecting to an API. And here's an application that I built off. Actually, like, I don't really like the channel so much, but there's I forgot what it is, but they do a COVID tracker. So I didn't build it following what they were doing. I built it kind of following their lead and example, but I kind of coded it from scratch. But here's a COVID tracker application. And what's cool is that it's using the COVID tracking API to get the data for different countries. So like, look, I could look up cases, and this is a great way to start working with an API as a transition step. But at the end of the day, you want to build something more complex that involves, using data from an API to not only display the data, but also have some sort of ability where you have authentication, you're able to log in users, and a logged in user is able to basically do basic CRUD applications from create, read, update, and delete. And with that being said, I'm not telling you to know how to build a backend from scratch. Like, I personally like to use Strapi that allows you to create backends much easier, but you will have to familiarize yourself with some sort of database, and SQL base or Postgres SQL is what I would recommend first, because that's something that you'll be working with at work. And there's a lot of people who like to use Firebase, but if you're trying to get a job, Firebase is not going to help you. And so here we go. Would front-end mentors projects be good to add portfolio? And hologram nunchucks, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought these guys up. In the case of those guys, yes. If you're doing front mentor projects, you could add those to your portfolio. Why? Because they're not you're basically, what they're doing is they're providing you the mockup, they're providing you a Figma file or a Photoshop XD file, but it's your job to create it. And they're kind of simulating what it would like to build a project if you were already working. So front-end mentors is a great place for you guys to actually get that experience, because at the end of the day, you're building that project yourself from scratch based on their specifications. So those projects you could definitely put in your portfolio. And if you haven't checked out that website, go check it out. I actually did check it out, and I don't have time to do everything, but I do want to go through that process, build some of their like intermediate or maybe advanced level projects to kind of test my skills. But that's a great place to start and kind of go from. And guys, by the way, love the questions, love you guys giving me your feedback. So let's do another 5-10 minutes of last questions to kind of close the show. And I hope you guys got some value. I know I was kind of all over the place because I wanted to talk about the junior level expectations, and then I told you about the horror story that was my first job, and kind of talked about how it was the worst thing that could happen to me. And at the end of the day, one of the ways if you're working at a good company is because they have a really good onboarding process where they ease your way into development. But with that being said, even though they might have a good onboarding process, they really want to invest in you as a junior developer, at the end of the day, you need to be able to have a good enough portfolio that you're able to get that job. So if you're not getting interviews, the 3 places you're suffering at is you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you don't have a GitHub, you don't have a good resume, you don't have a portfolio site. And granted, I'll show you my profile. To finish the show, let's kind of talk about that. So as a bare minimum, this is what you have to have. So you should have a portfolio website. And for my portfolio website, I kind of took out all my old projects because I'm redoing my portfolio. And I'm redoing all my portfolio projects. But as a bare minimum, you should have a home for your portfolio. You should have a website, and I didn't build this from scratch. I used a template that I got from, I think, Bootstrap Made website. And here's my basic portfolio. So here's the bare minimum. Number one, my name is Paul Braslavsky. Do not spam me, but I just want to be honest with you guys and show you that these are the things I'm doing. Number one, you should have a domain name, your name, and you should have a portfolio. Don't build it yourself as a junior dev, please. find a good template. Look how professional this looks. And at some point, I'm going to add my portfolio projects here. I have my resume here. And if you're doing a resume, and I'll talk in a bunch of my other videos how to have a good resume. The resume that I have now, I showed it to a bunch of recruiters. A lot of interviews that I've been going, and people that were interviewing me who see my resume, they're all like, hey, you have a good resume. So there's a science to writing a resume. Check out my previous videos, and I'll make another video in the near future talking about just the resume. But you need to have a good resume, and it needs to be written in a bullet point. And this is just part of my resume. I just kind of put on this website. But you need to have a portfolio home. And as I finish up my portfolio projects that I'm building from scratch right now, I'm going to create a portfolio section. I'm going to add them here. But the point is, I didn't wait to create portfolio projects, but I created a home for my portfolio that looks professional. 3 things you need to have here: a portfolio site to put your portfolio projects in. Number 2, you need to have a LinkedIn profile, right? And your LinkedIn profile should look professional. Well, like, this is the best picture I had of myself, but it needs to, you can't be like a picture like, party time. No, it's got to be a professional picture of you, like, looking to get a job. And I kind of put this graphic of all the tech that I use, and just so when someone lands on my LinkedIn profile, they see what I do. They see the job. I have to kind of switch this up a little bit because now I'm doing stuff for Red Hawk Research. That's my current role now that I just started not too long ago. The most important thing that I would stress here, outside of your experience, sometimes you don't have experience. If you could get on this skill section where people are starting to kind of endorse your skill, like React, JavaScript, ASP.NET, you need to make sure that this section has the stuff, the skills that you're looking to get a job with. Before, I didn't have this here, and a recruiter told me that this is one of the most important parts. This is the place where a recruiter will go and see, like, are you actually have the skills that you say you have the skills, and are other people endorsing you? By the way, like, if you are able to get a recommendation from someone, super huge. I got a recommendation from someone I worked with. They wrote a really nice on-pulse methodical and dedicated developer with an excellent skill set. He has written multiple components and whatever. Doesn't matter what they said here, but the point is, the more social proof you have that show that you have experience as a developer, very important. And by the way, I didn't wake up one day and had this. It all takes time to get here. And so don't worry if you don't get this right away. Here's more of my bigger portfolio. Granted, you're not going to be able to see anything here because I have like a very small screen here. But yeah, here's my portfolio, and I'll talk more about it. Look at how professional this portfolio looks. You need to work and make sure that everything you do looking to get a job, not having a good resume. And by the way, I talked in my previous video, if you don't have experience, how to use this type of format where you write about what you did, where you talk about your personal projects, and it makes it look like you have real work experience. I talk more about it in my other videos, but just note that, look how professional this works. My last resume did not look like this, and guess how many jobs I got off my old resume? 0, right? It looked like crap, and so I was treated like crap. So take time. I paid for this template, money, and I'll make a video talking about the process that I went. It is organized, it's professional. I had recruiters tell me my resume looks awesome. So I know that the stuff that I'm doing now is working, and that's why I want to share with you guys, so you guys kind of go know that like what I'm telling you guys is not me just talking out of my butt, but it's the stuff that I had to do to increase my chances of getting a job. And the last thing that you need to make sure you guys do before we finish the show, and before you guys ask your last few questions, is you need to have a GitHub. And people will look at your GitHub. They might not look at every detailed thing here and go click and read the code, but they want to see you're active. And I want to show you, by the way, I started this in 2013. I did absolutely nothing with it. 2014, absolutely nothing with it. 2015, I made one commit, one contribution, did absolutely nothing. 2016, absolutely nothing. It looks terrible. But then I started taking my coding more seriously. Still nothing. 2018 though, bam, started really putting my feet to the fire, being like, hey, if you want to break into this career, you got to be doing the work. And so 2018, 2019, bam, 2020, this is where I started working at my company. So this is like, I was like, let me focus on work. And then I realized I need to start working on transitional things. So I started coding more. 2021, this is where I'm at, making commits. A lot of these are not my personal projects anymore, but projects that I'm working for companies. So a bare minimum, you need to have a good LinkedIn profile. You need to have GitHub with GitHub history. And more importantly, you need to create a home. Where did it go? It disappeared. Did I close it? I probably closed it. But you need to have a portfolio website that looks professional. And like, again, don't build your own portfolio website from scratch. Use a theme, because your portfolio is not to showcase the project you're building. And when you're starting out, you might not even have any good projects to show. So find a template, set up a professional looking portfolio, build a home. And as you build your portfolio, add the projects that you're working on here. You know what I mean? But that's basically all I wanted to like kind of add in that department. This idea of that it takes a lot of work to get hired. It takes a lot of process, but everybody has to do it. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy ways. Just want to be honest. So let's look at some like final questions and go do another few minutes. 5-10 minutes. If you keep the questions coming, though, I'll keep answering, though. Let's see here. Here's another good question. How difficult are coding interviews for junior developers studying data structure algorithms now, but I'm not sure how far I need to go with studying. Cool channel. I'm glad that you liked it, and welcome, for your first time here. Thank you, and I hope you find some value. So here's the thing. This is the process that I took. I did not bother learning algorithms and data structures until I made sure that I had a good portfolio, I had a LinkedIn profile, make sure that I had really good projects to show. And now that I'm interviewing, I started to really devote a lot, like 40% of my time, really focusing on interview prep, focusing on algorithm and data structures, because at the end of the day, when you go to an interview, they're going to ask you, you want to be as prepared as you can. Now, the truth is some companies put more effort on whiteboarding and algorithmics. I do terrible at those, just being straight honest with you. And there's a lot of companies that will have you actually, instead of doing algorithmic questions, they will actually have you do like a thing where you do some sort of code. Like they ask you, hey, can you code this component for me? And you do like a live coding thing. That's kind of where I excel, and this is what I like. So every interview is different. So definitely be comfortable of coding on the spot with whatever technology you use, if it's JavaScript or React, making sure that you're able to do that. Number two, keep practicing interviewing questions, keep practicing algo and data structure stuff just to make yourself more prepared. And hopefully the interview that you go on to, like the stars are aligned, they ask you questions that you know the answer to, and you're going to get a job. But no matter where you are in your journey, interviews are always stressful. Even my friend who's been working as a senior dev, when he goes to an interview, he's like, man, they're probably going to ask me something I don't know. So yeah, keep it up. Creating with code, great to see you here. How would you share a site that you built for a client? Link to the site only, or share the code on GitHub to prove that it's your code? What I would do, I would have the link. I would have both in my portfolio. I would have a link to the site in action, make sure that it works, make sure it has no errors. And then I would also have a link to GitHub. And the truth is, most people will go to GitHub to see like if you have recent commits, to make sure that you're coding on a regular basis. But most people are not going to pull the code and check it, especially for a junior role. And so have the possibility for them to look both. But more importantly, they just want to see you created something that is working. And so that's what I would do. So if you have no actual job experience, from Jose here, would you suggest to put your project experience? 100%. And let me go back to my screen share. So I'll give a brief example. So let's say I did not have any of this stuff here, right? I didn't have front-end developer or I didn't have this experience here. What I would do instead of being, I was a software development engineer at VersaSuite, I would say, I build a bug tracking, whatever program, and I worked on it from January till May, whatever the months are that you worked on it, and I would write that experience exactly the same way I would write it here. So for my bug tracking that I built as my personal project, I would still wrote maintainable and reusable code using latest ES6, JavaScript, and React features. Did I use React routers in my projects? I did. And then I would write it and word it exactly the same way. Implemented React routers for navigation to fetch dynamic data for a bug tracker based on user ID. So I would basically write it exactly the same way I would for my job experience, but I would just be talking about my personal project. This is what I tell you guys. When you build personal project, build stuff that simulates like a real life job. And that's why that way you could use it as your experience. So basically, whatever you build, talk about it in your resume exactly in this process. And I say exactly because this is what works. Don't do anything else. So maybe like you build a project where you can you created a basic HTML and CSS site with React. So write it exactly like this. Convert a static website into a single page application using React. Created class-based UI components, because that's what you did in your personal project. So talk about your personal project as if it was a project at your job, and write it the same way, like the way you would write about a project that you did at work. I hope that helps. So guys, let's see if you guys have any last parting questions and parting thoughts. Let's see here. Did you use a CMS to build your portfolio? The time it takes me to try to learn WordPress, I could have coded site myself from scratch. Please give me your thoughts on this. It's really up to you what you're applying. Like for instance, I was applying for React site positions, so I needed to make my site using React and JavaScript from scratch. Now, because I was more applying for front end, I did not build my back end from scratch. I used a CMS called Strappy, and the reason why I used it is because building a full stack application with React, it would just take a long time. And being a one-man developer, I focus on the front end. Like depending what you're applying for, that's what you have to build. Now, if I was applying as a back-end developer, I would not use Strappy. I would have to show a back-end application I made with Node.js or C# or Python, what have you. But whatever you're applying for the job, you need to show that you built that project from scratch for that application. That's why, I focus more on the front end, because in my case, I feel it's much easier to get it going. If you're looking to, get a job as a WordPress developer, then you need to build a WordPress theme from scratch using PHP. If you're looking to get a job at an agency, or you're looking to freelance where you're just using WordPress and most of the clients don't need any solution built from scratch, because you just basically customize pre-existing themes that you buy from a site from ThemeForest, or you build the website using Elementor drop and drag, which is nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of people make good money with that. Then that's what you need to learn and do. But at the end of the day, if you're looking to be a developer at a company, let's say with React and JavaScript, you need to have a portfolio that you build that project from scratch. I hope that helps. And I just realized that I never switched to my bigger screen. Hey, it is what it is. Live and learn. But guys, what I want to say is that thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. I always try to give you as much value as I can. Sometimes like my streams are more like, organized. Sometimes they're not. But at the end of the day, like for me is I want to not like create stuff where I just tell you what you guys want to hear. I want to be honest and about my experience, the troubles I'm having, and not sugarcoat anything. And if you see me struggling, it's because I was struggling. If you see me talking about an experience that was bad, it's because I had a bad experience. And so, like, it's very important for you guys to kind of get unfiltered kind of presentation of what I do here, to know that it's okay to fail as long as you're learning from your mistakes. It's okay not to be perfect as long as you're striving towards your goal, and as long as you're working and doing the things you need to do to get hired. And to end up the stream, if you were to take something away from here, is that number one, getting your junior role, if you get it at a good company, they're going to have a good onboarding process to ease you into the work, so you don't have to freak out like I did at my first job, not because I wasn't ready for it, but because the company I had, they did not value the investment in the junior devs, and they did not have a good onboarding process. But that's not the case for a lot of places. But you're not going to get the junior role if you don't have a good LinkedIn profile, don't have a good resume, and don't have a good portfolio of projects that you built from scratch that are in line of type of projects that a client would ask you to build. Whatever projects you're building, like, there should not be a question, did you build it personally for yourself or did you build it for a client? They should be that type of a project, because that's something you'll be able to translate into your resume, like I showed earlier today, to be able to get the job and build experience when you don't have any at all. And so I am making progress. You've been witnessing my growth as a developer on this channel, right? And so I'm only sharing with you things that work, and I tell you when things were hard and when things were easy. Like, things were not, my cats like are being cute, so I gotta pet him or her. I have two black cats. I could never tell which one is which. But that, like, I'm sharing with you the things that I'm doing that are working for me, and the things that were not working, I stopped doing them, and I tell you, they weren't working for me. Like, my resume, when I was scrappy resume, wasn't working for me. I got 0 jobs for past like year because my resume sucked. And then I rewrote and reformatted my resume. The skills didn't change. It's just the way it was formatted, and using the bullet points with keywords made it more appealing. And I started getting more like responses, and everybody that looked at my resume, they all tell me like, hey, we'd love to have an interview with you. Your resume looks good. And so, like, that's how I know it's working, because I'm getting more opportunities now, and I'm talking and getting more interviews. So, hey guys, as always, like, really appreciate you guys jumping on with me on this Friday. I hope you guys have the rest of this weekend. I am glad that you guys getting value from what it is that I do here. But at the end of the day, the thank you goes to you guys. If I didn't have you guys here, this channel would not exist. And so thank you so much for your love, your support. If you not subscribed to this channel, subscribe if you want to. If you have any suggestions for later videos or any other topic that you want me to talk about, just let me know, because this channel is for you guys. This is not for me. This channel is for you guys to have a another perspective on some dude on the internet who decided to switch careers late in life and became a developer, right? Like, and the reason why I use my real name, the reason why I show you my real LinkedIn, the reason why I show you my portfolio is so you guys could look me up. Just please don't spam me, but you could look it up to see that I'm not trying to pull wool over your head. I'm literally doing the things that I tell you I'm doing. And when something is not working, I will tell you about it. And if it's working, then I'll tell you to do more of it, because I want you to succeed. I want to succeed. And I want you guys to see me from start to finish going and getting that next position, getting that next job, because, I didn't make it yet. Like, I'm still in the process. I'm in the trenches, and I'm going through the grind that you guys probably going through. So thank you so much, as always, and love all of you guys. And with that being said, you have a great rest of the weekend, and and I'll see you guys next time. I was gonna do my dramatic exit where I turn off the lights and look away, but I don't know what my light switch is. That's how prepared I am. But hey, cheers to you guys, drinking my coffee, and I'll see you guys next stream. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks. By the way, before I go, listen, I just want to say, like, shout out to all of you guys. because love all your support. You know, all of you guys saying, you know, thank you. Ronson, thank you. Jose, thank you. Logic Indie, thank you. Thank you, everybody. You know, Jose just shooting the, you know, mural. Dustin, creating with code. Thanks for all your love. You know, thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next stream. Just wanted to give you guys all shout out because I appreciate all of you guys, and I'll see you guys next weekend. Take care.